Germany has warned against travel to Ukraine and told its nationals to leave the country, following fears that Russia is planning an imminent invasion. German Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock said that the crisis was escalating. While on a trip to Egypt, she told journalists that she and NATO allies were still working on a diplomatic solution. Germany is the latest country to issue a travel warning to the region in recent days. Here's the German Foreign Minister.
We will keep our embassy in Kyiv open, but reduce the entire diplomatic staff there. That includes the seconded employees of our partners and the German teachers abroad. Family members will also leave the country now. Our Consulate General in Donetsk, set up in 2014, will be temporarily relocated to Lviv. The Foreign Office also issues a travel warning. Germans who are there are urged to consider leaving the country.
And for more on this, let's bring in DW Chief International Editor Richard Walker. Can you talk us through this warning a little bit more?
Yeah, Nick. So Annalena Baerbock described the situation at the moment in Ukraine as precarious, saying that there is no de-escalation, the de-escalation that the Germans and the rest of the West have been pushing for in diplomatic channels in recent weeks, but rather the opposite, referring to the fact that there are large military exercises going on at the moment by 30,000 Russian troops in Belarus. There are also naval exercises going on around the port of Sevastopol in Crimea, which the Russians, of course, annexed back in 2014. So pointing to this, and this really chiming in with warnings that we've had from the United States yesterday, that it does appear that some kind of military action could be imminent. So Annalena Baerbock saying on the basis of this that they are taking precautions then around Germans in Ukraine at the moment, talking about the embassy staff there, not closing the embassy, but reducing the headcount there, and saying to Germans who are in Ukraine that they should think about if it's essential for them to be there, and if not, that they should leave.
And can you tell us a little bit about the timing? Why this now?
Yeah, well, there has been really a kind of a flurry of concern, if you like, over the last 24 hours or so about the situation there. The exercises that we're seeing in Belarus, the naval exercise that I just mentioned, also those both feeding into that. And the United States yesterday issuing a stark warning that they believe, according to their intelligence, that it's possible that the Russians may make a military move in the next week or so, even while the Winter Olympics are still taking place. There'd been some speculation that the Russians might be waiting that out. I should stress, the Russian foreign minister spoke to his American counterpart today on the phone. We know that, and the Russians are pushing back. So Sergei Lavrov saying to Tony Blinken in that call, according to the Russian side, that they feel that the West is trying to provoke a conflict with this this public talk of this aggression.
Well, yeah, I think the Russians have quite often accused the West of things that, is a bit of a mirror game. But look, do we feel now that a Russian invasion is around the corner, given that, Western countries are getting their nationals to leave?
In a background briefing recently, one German official described it like this, that they want to look at capabilities, not necessarily intentions. And what they see here, and what the Americans are pointing to at the moment, is the capability to take some military action. Very large numbers of troops, these exercises going on, providing a kind of reason for these troops to be on the move. The intentions, of course, this is a huge question. What does Vladimir Putin really want? There's been lots of debate about that. That's not completely clear. But the capability is there.
OK, thanks so much for that insight, DW Chief International Editor Richard Walker. Now, Moscow denies having any plans to invade Ukraine, of course, but with more than 100,000 troops, as we just heard, stationed near the border, and a ramp-up in military drills, tensions are reaching a fever pitch. American President Joe Biden is due to speak with Russia's Vladimir Putin later today in the hope of averting war. And we're going to go to Ukraine now to see how things look there and talk to DW correspondent Matthias Böhlinger, who is in the capital, Kyiv. Matthias, Germany joins the list of countries asking its citizens to leave Ukraine as soon as possible. Are people likely to evacuate, do you think?
Well, we've heard the foreign minister. She's already announced who is going to leave from state organizations. That includes the embassy, non-essential staff, their families, and that also includes the organizations, for example, in aid or in other cooperation that are here on behalf of the German government on the federal budget. They will also evacuate some stuff, and all the companies will go through the same. They will also have to check with their insurance companies, because once a warning is issued, this has also consequences on their insurance companies. So I would expect that many people will bring at least their families out of the country, but also many expats who do not have to be here might be leaving, and also business trips will be cancelled.
And have you spoken to any Ukrainians about how they feel about all these Western governments telling them to leave? It must be unsettling.
Well, yeah, it is unsettling, of course, and there is a sense of urgency, a sense of crisis here that there has been a sense of crisis before, but people have been going about their daily lives. They still do. Many have prepared for it, but this, of course, makes it much more urgent. And I've heard some voices who've said that they feel like abandoned, and there is also a pushback from the Ukrainian government saying there is no need to panic, somewhat disagreeing with the rhetoric of the Western governments, although their tone has been shifting slightly, and they are also now insisting that this is a serious matter.
Let me ask you about that emotion and perhaps the despair. I don't know if I'm putting words in people's mouths. We understand there's some protests in the capital today. Can you tell us about that briefly?
Yeah, despair is the wrong word. Despair is the wrong word. There's resolve here to defend the country. Many people have joined these forces, and this march, it's not a very big march, but this march is, of course, is meant as a signal of unity, and that people here are not giving up on their country. There's no despair in the way that people would feel that it's an inevitable fate to be invaded.
Okay, correspondent Matthias Bödinger in Kyiv on the situation there. Thanks so much. And for more insight, we're going to cross to Vladimir Yesipov from DW Russian, who joins us from London. Vladimir, we just heard about all these Western countries getting their nationals out of the country, suggesting they leave, closing embassies and so on. Russia has confirmed that it is reducing its diplomatic staff in Ukraine. What's the justification there?
Russian Foreign Ministry indeed confirmed today that Russia is pulling or has pulled already some of its diplomatic staff out of Ukraine, fearing provocations from Kyiv, as the spokeswoman from the Russian Foreign Ministry said. And this is the important point. Whatever happening in the Ukraine, or whatever might happen in the next day or weeks in the Ukraine, Russia is always blaming the Ukrainians or the West or United States for what's going to happen there. The Russian Foreign Ministry didn't call any concrete numbers of how many diplomats are pulled off the Ukraine. Russia joined the list of the countries who is reducing staff of the Ukrainians, but this is part of the Russian tactics. Always blame the United States.
Yeah, there's a parallelism, and it seems an element of theater, and I guess our viewers will decide who is sincere in withdrawing their nationals and sensing danger. But let's move on to what's going to be happening later today. The United States president is scheduled to talk with Vladimir Putin by phone. What can we expect to happen and to be said?
Honestly, my expectations are very low. I would not expect much from today's talk between President Putin and President Biden. I still hope they can de-escalate somehow, but I'm afraid we are heading for the worst, because there's, in my opinion, we're reaching the point of no return somewhen. And I'm not sure we can solve this huge diplomatic or military crisis between Russia and the West with a huge amount of issues, problematic issues, by just one call tonight. So my expectations are quite low.
Yeah, it's hard to see how that could solve everything. But look, if I can just ask you about what's going on in Russia, how much support is there for the Russian president amongst the citizenry for a possible invasion of Ukraine?
Well, one thing is quite sure. Whatever President Putin decides and whatever he decides to do in the Ukraine or wherever, Russian public will always support him because the Russian government is in total control of the Russian public opinion. So I've just spoke to two friends from Moscow who are completely surprised by the whole, how they call it, hysteria in the West, because Russia is on the right side in their opinion. And everything is going according to them because of the United States trying to push the Ukraine to the NATO. So whatever happens in the next weeks and in the next days, United States and in the West would be blamed by Russian public opinion.
All right, that was DW Russians Vladimir Yesipov joining us from London. Thank you so much for that insight. And I'm joined now from Brussels by our NATO correspondent, Terry Schultz. Terry, Germany also now withdrawing embassy staff and advising citizens to leave Ukraine following, as we just heard, similar action by the United States. The Biden administration seems to think we're at a point of outright conflict. Are they sharing the intelligence about this with their NATO allies?
They do seem to think that outright conflict is at least very possible, more possible than it has been up until now. And they are sharing that intelligence. You heard from Richard that President Biden held a video call with key European leaders. And last night at NATO headquarters, there was a meeting of all 30 NATO ambassadors to share the intelligence from the United States. And something was really striking after this meeting and leading up into it, Nick, and that's that until now, European countries had really been resisting the U.S. Move to pull their citizens out of Ukraine, to advise them to leave. And once this intelligence just started coming out yesterday, you saw many European allies doing just that, starting with Norway, then the Netherlands and the UK. And now, of course, we've seen many more, including Germany. And that says to me that this intelligence is very credible, that the U.S. was able to share with allies exactly what it was that was leading them to believe that indeed an invasion could be imminent.
And we just saw, of course, Terry, the NATO Secretary General in that report welcoming American troops to Romania. So NATO's ratcheting up its military posture in the allied countries that border Ukraine. How much of a concern is there that any Russian military action could spread beyond Ukraine's borders?
Well, one key factor is that it's not just a Russian buildup on the border with Ukraine anymore, which provides a bit of a buffer to NATO allies. But currently there are Russian and Belarusian military drills going on, and that has brought more forces than have been seen in Belarus since the end of the Cold War, according to NATO. And Belarus borders NATO allies directly, Latvia, Lithuania, and Poland. And so you do now have this Russian buildup not buffered by Ukraine, but right there on NATO allies. And that makes the Baltic states and Poland very nervous, and Romania as well. And that's why you've seen the U.S. and other allies send reinforcements to these border countries. A deterrent to Russia, a warning to Russia that you may not step into NATO territory, and we're there waiting for you.
And just a really quick final question, if I may. Vladimir Putin and Joe Biden are to speak on the phone today. What can they say to each other to make things better?
I don't know if it will make things better, but you'll certainly hear the U.S. president reminding Vladimir Putin that all teed up are these measures, both by Europeans and by the United States, that would cause pain to the Kremlin, is something that they've said, that they would be sanctions like have never been used before, that would really not just hurt the oligarchs, but would also hurt ordinary Russians. I mean, the United States has said that they would really trot out some sanctions that they have not been willing to use before. And that's something that President Biden will be making clear to President Putin. There is still time to change your mind if you have, in fact, decided to invade Ukraine, and I would highly recommend that you do that.
All right, Terry Schultz in Brussels, thanks so much.